All right, now we're ready to rock. All right, so we're just gonna pick off like where we were last Tuesday. We were kind of going through all of those simpler movements and not ignoring them in class, but actually taking some time to coach them in class. So we've got a couple more, and then I kind of just built on that. Found old Greg Glassman article on the push-up, very simple article. Um, and I want to talk about that because I actually realized something just now reading it that I think would actually make me a better coach, even though we've talked about things like that before. On that note, I don't know if you guys are aware, but on brokenscience.org, Greg Glassman has posted all of his original articles. They're the Glassman archives, all of his original articles he wrote for CrossFit. I think it'd be a really cool thing that we work through all those. Because I would say in the world of coaches, if you listen to a lot of the higher level coaches, they're very well versed with his writing. And also, I think if you, this is cool to me, but if you just simply go around, you're probably going to be one of very few CrossFit coaches in the world that have gotten through all of them and actually have read them. So I think that'd be a really cool, productive, developmental thing for us to do to kind of take things back to basics and then rebuild our base. Anyway, let's start. I've got up next on our list is sit up. So let's talk about one, all the different versions of sit up we can do, right? Let's list them out here. Like we don't have to get every single one because I saw Jose's eyebrows go up. We could be here for an hour. But let's talk about our main ones. What's the first one that comes to your mind if you should sit up on a whiteboard?
Butterfly.
Butterfly.
Yeah, butterfly ab sit up. That's for sure the first one I think of. Let's talk about that one. Coaching that in class, what's the first thing that you can holler out that not everybody, but like if you're newer, you're probably gonna get it wrong.
Where to put the how to put the mat.
Where to put the ab mat? Yeah, I see people sit on it. I see people have it upside down. We take it for very, very granted because we've done probably 1,000 ab mat sit-ups at this point in time in our CrossFit career. But yeah, just hey, the thicker part is going to go closest to your butt. The ab mat's going to go where your back arches. Like having that understood, we've all been coaching class where you see somebody like sitting on it. Or it's upside down. Not the biggest deal in the world if it's upside down, but just a really simple thing that you didn't ignore when you're coaching. On the ab mat sit up, why do we butterfly? I've had this asked to me in class before. Come on, guys. It takes our hip flexors out. I don't know if you were answering me or not, but you're muted, so I didn't hear it. But yeah, it takes out the hip flexors on it. So if we butterfly our sit up, that's going to make the sit up more challenging. I think that's a valuable thing to know, not just because like someone's going to at some point ask you why we butterfly, but if you have somebody in class that's struggling in a butterfly, going to like a straight leg or having those legs in line may help them actually be able to perform a sit up. And it can be, I don't even want to call it a scaled version, but a version that they're going to be able to do versus if they can't do an ab mat. I've had plenty of people in class that do not have the strength to perform an ab mat sit up or a butterfly sit up. Taking the ab mat out will be easier. Going to a straight leg or like a traditional feet flat on the ground, like a crunch would be a lot easier because their hip flexors can help them pull.
Can also add weights on their feet, so it'll be easier for them to get up.
Some bigger dumbbells that they can like slide their feet under work really, really well. That's a good one. I used to have at Riptide. I don't know you guys have met Gail. I think you said you ever met Gail. I know. Do you know her? She was like 65. Loved things like sit ups and stuff like that, but you had to anchor her feet or she couldn't do them. And that was just with her being a master, what she needed. What's something else that's going to be an important part of an ab mat sit up? And it's really the reason why we're using an ab mat that you should make clear to class.
To keep their butts on the ground, not on the mat.
Yeah. Make sure they're not sliding. Also, the raspberries people get. Like if you explain that if you control yourself back, you won't slide on the ground and you won't get a raspberry, that can be beneficial. Also like controlling because we're going to get stronger.
using the
full range
arms
of
for
motion?
momentum.
Yeah, full range of motion. Let's talk about momentum in a minute, because I'm gonna bridge that to more advanced stuff. So that is gonna be a part of it. But yeah, range of motion, right? We're putting an ab mat behind us to extend our range of motion, right? To stretch out those abs that we can lay over it more. So if we have somebody doing an ab mat sit up that's not sitting up all the way, we're kind of also defeating some purpose there, right? We want to make sure the range of motion stays true. So I tell people, try to get your shoulders to touch the back of the ground and then sit so your shoulders get in front of your hips. And that's as, you know, as far as you can basically move there. So that's a big one, because you get something like Annie, benchmark girl, trying to PR. People are flying on ab mat sit-ups, and they're coming up and they're touching the heels of their feet and pushing off back, which is fine. But because they've touched their heel, they stopped moving forward, and then they're doing actually like half rep sit-ups. They're not really doing full rep sit-ups. So usually you see it with speed involved, like other things. Momentum, right? Depending what the workout is, if I want someone moving fast, throw your hands, right? You can also do a straight leg ab mat sit up where when you lay back, your knees are slightly bent, and when you sit up, you straighten your legs, and it actually serves kind of like a GHD sit up, and you can have people go really quick there too. It's a really nice trick for speed. It's also a nice trick if someone's struggling, that they get a little more hip flexor help there. But yeah, if it's Annie, throw your arms, right? I want you to go fast. If we're doing a workout that is 30 GHDs around, and I've got people that it's not appropriate to be on the GHD, my goal for that is to build them strength to get them on the GHD. So having them do a strict sit up where it's like I just take their hands and say like pinch your shirt or your sports bra, or a stick sit up. Have you guys ever done stick sit ups? Take a PVC. I know all the mayhem people have. Take a PVC pipe, you put it across your like upper back. I just make sure people aren't on their neck, like twerking their neck, but it makes it a strict sit up. So you have no arm throw. They're pretty challenging, I think. Like they get you pretty fast. So if it's something that I'm trying to build strength on to get to a toes to bar, to get to a GHD sit up, to get to a tuck up or a V up, make it strict. Take away those momentums for those people. Like change the intent of why we're doing it.
There's a couple of things that I want to ask. Do you say that ab mat sit-ups gives you, the people that hasn't done appropriate sit-ups and they have like, oh, I have a pain in the lower back at the end of doing a bunch of sit-ups. Do you think that engaging, like thinking, press your lumbar curvature to the bigger curvature of the ab mat sit-up, would be that the reasoning of it, or something else to cue?
That's a tough one, because I think people that have like a back injury actually happening, which there's people in the world that are very functional, but then when you start adding flexion into the spine, even though it's, flexion of a sit up, it's not under any load, they get in discomfort. So like it's probably actually the fact that their spine is moving is why it gets discomforting to them. Those people, I would be more inclined to turn it into some kind of like hold or something where they don't have movement. Like my back is really sensitive on twisting sometimes, and it's a very, very old injury I have. And sometimes it's totally fine. I have no pain, no discomfort. And then other times, like I don't even want to turn to look at somebody because I can feel that it's not right. So it may that be the actual flexion of the spine of
Yeah.
what's not feeling great to them. And like in that case, like you're gonna sub out plank hold, a hollow hold may be okay, even though there's gonna be a little flexion because it's not moving. So I would just go to those types of things.
That was
potentially.
my next question, actually. Like, there are people that sit-ups are already challenging. So what will be the other progressions? I'm thinking like crunches on a box, sitting on a box, or just lifting legs. I don't know if you have any other.
Depending on the level. Let's like kind of go through that. So like I talked about, if someone struggles on an ab mat setup, straightening the legs could help, right? Throwing the arms could help. But there's people that still cannot do those things anyway. I had a girl recently, she started, and it's it almost looks frustrating for me as the trainer because she's not moving much. But what I had her do was put her feet flat on the ground and I told her hands up. And then every time she did like a crunch, and I was like, you're going to crunch and you're just going to reach for the sky on the crunch and hold for a second and then come back down. So, really, what she was doing was like a very, very scaled hollow for just a second or two and then would relax and then do that for reps. It felt very frustrating to me because of the range of motion thing. And I'm like, I really want her to sit up, but it worked. Like she's now 2 full sit-ups. She just needed to get some strength in the core. So like even though that's minimal, that can work. And the person that can't sit up all the way, it's still going to be intense for them, even though for us it looks like a joke. But that I don't love bird dogs and dead bugs because they're usually not done right and they're not a good in netcon movement. Like I want to maintain the hollow in those and move slow in those. And to me, that's not ideal if it's in the middle of a workout because I don't want you always going intentionally slow. So what I would do is I would take like the reps and go, okay, if it's 30 sit-ups, I want you to accumulate a 30-second plank. So like a plank or a hollow hold would be my subs there as well. Because like what do we need? If they can't do a sit-up, we need core strength. Both of those are gonna get core strength.
Oh, what about for somebody that's pregnant? Like I know plank holds, but then would you do the bird dog in that case?
Yeah, in
Just
their
to give them
case, I would say
variety?
that's a bit different because they're also like, especially they're getting into third trimester type stuff. Like we're also trying to keep, the heart rates like no higher than zone 3, maybe, so they're already gonna not be going fast because of that too. Like they need to always feel like they can talk and breathe. That's the rate that they're to be moving. So like the speed of my workouts is now done for now anyway. So like for them, I would be okay with it. I would lean more toward a bird dog than a dead bug personally, just because I don't want them like arching back while they're laying on the ground. So I would think about that. And then what Jose was saying, like depending on the degree, you may have somebody sit on the box and lift their legs off the floor sitting down on a box. For us, it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's a crunch. You can do that one leg at a time as well.
Oh, like
Um,
literally sitting down and raising. Oh yeah, that makes sense. That's
Yeah,
true.
like we're sitting in a chair right
Yeah,
now, like you lift
yeah.
both off and that can be a very like lesser degree core work. Or if somebody's very, very overweight, because like you also have a consideration where they may be at a size where they can't get up and down off the floor, right?
Mm.
And we're gonna have to modify everything that goes from the floor up. So like doing stuff off a box or a bench is gonna be really important too.
And adding to that is like my coach did the pregnant course. I don't know how it's the name. But they were very focused on activating like the pelvic floor in order when you deliver the baby, you will have more strength, and also when you finish, you don't leak up pee or anything else.
And,
So they
and
are pretty much on breathe now. The engage like tight as if you're going to poop, and then pretty much doing bird dogs. It's pretty much isometric things what they do.
there's a really good cue for like the pelvic floor that I like. It's kind of a weird cue, but like if you're doing like a Kegel or like it's kind of the same as like a hollow position, to be honest. I tell people, imagine when you do that, that you're gonna zip up your crotch. So you get them, and this is good for men too. You get them to have a lot of tension, like the glutes, like the pelvic floor, the really low abdominals. Like you think about that motion, it's a good visual motion to understand how to activate because you have to remember there's people in our class that can't figure out how to activate their core when we're about to do a back squat. So like to get them to activate their pelvic floor is going to be even harder to understand and do. So like just good cues like that. I follow a bunch of postpartum pages. You see them write it, and like those are good pages to follow because you get different cues because they work with that population a lot. And I would say it's not just women that have had babies. It's a lot of women in general struggle with it, and there's also guys that struggle with it too. You don't hear it spoken about. So all of those cues is like that's a good general class cue to do if you're doing a hollow hold. Like imagine you're gonna zip your crotch up and squeeze your butt like you're gonna hold a fart in. Holding a fart in is another good cue for it as well.
would a glute bridge kind of
Good.
do the same, right? Yeah, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, glute bridges are great. Any like booty work is gonna be really good for it. So all of that stuff. And if you get, if you get somebody that is very pregnant and they can no longer do things like that, like a banded side shuffle, maybe a substitute that you use for a sit up that day, because it can help with the glutes and help with the pelvic floor and stuff like that too. Because there's also going to be a point in time they can't lay on their back anymore,
Yeah.
right? So like that's going to eventually go out of the window. All really good points. And I'm sure you guys have encountered somebody at this point. Every one of them's different. What worked for one woman's going to be not comfortable for another, and then it is going to be comfortable for the one after that. Like I've had girls row the entire pregnancy, and then I've had girls say it does not feel good to row, and then I've had the one that says it doesn't feel good to row still goes running, which I think is
Yeah.
crazy, but she was like it's completely comfortable. So it's going to be a lot of just feedback on stuff like that too, as with any member, right?
Mhm.
Kind of relaying back to the sit-ups, you got GHDs in your programmed in your thing. And I think Riptide, you guys have it tough because you just never have GHDs because there's only one. So you never like have to think about how to program this or do it well in class. So if you've got a GHD workout, like we know one thing, right? GHDs can tear people up. Like that's a known thing for us coaches, right? We can cause rhabdo pretty quick if somebody's not ready for it. If somebody isn't comfortable with the GHD, it usually gets worse because now they're also nervous about sitting back. So they're not even doing normal GHD sit-ups. Now they're doing GHD negatives because they're going really slow because they're scared. So they're actually causing more damage than we even realize when we say 10 reps. Their 10 reps is worth because of the slowness. So that's something else to also consider. If I've got GHDs in the workout, right? And let's say I've got 4 sets of 30 in the workout. That's 120. I know that can destroy somebody. I need to come up with a proof or a plan that's going to keep the person that it's not appropriate off and building strength like they need to. Or if it's the person that like they can get on for sure, but 30 is not going to be a good idea. I need to be able to scale them to a number where they're not going to be in trouble. So doing the strict sit-ups, like the strict ab mat sit-ups where you hold, or I personally like doing the stick sit-ups even more, is automatically my test in the general warm-up of who's gonna go where. They don't know that yet. The way I usually stage it is I say, hey, you're gonna give me 15 stick sit-ups. And I said, if you need to drop the PVC and use your arms, go ahead and do that. That's fine. But I want you to try to get through this 15. See you, Cayman. And what usually happens is you have people that go through 15 no problem. And I'm like, GHD, 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 GHD. And then you have people that are like on 7 and they're like, and then they drop it and they start throwing their hands. So I'm like, okay, we need to keep building strength. We're not going to get on the GHD today. Or depending, like, well, maybe they get 10 and they can't figure out 15. Then I'm like, okay, we are going to get on the GHD, but we're not doing 30. You're only going to do 10 per round. So it's a really good way to test and layer to make sure we don't get anybody on there that's not appropriate. Athletes are going to fight you. They're going to say it's fine. They're going to say they've done it before. They haven't done it in 6 months sometimes. Be like, try to stand your ground with it. So I let, depending on who it is, like I'll let them on, but I'm like, you're doing this many reps, and be like very stern in the reps that you're prescribing. I've known people get rhabdo off the GHD. We had an athlete at Riptide at one point in time, very, very fit individual, like macros, blood work for the right supplements type dude, wears his Whoop, publishes his data, like the works, like trained for triathlon, but didn't get on GHDs very often. And he was hell bent on doing Annie, but on the GHD, that's 150 GHDs. I didn't see him for 3 weeks. That's not an exaggeration. He was destroyed. He couldn't stand up straight. He couldn't get out of bed. And it was my fault for letting him talk me into it. But he just wasn't, his abdominals were not conditioned for that volume. He should have done like half rep A&E on the GHD at most. And so it goes to show, it doesn't just mean like deconditioned athletes. Like, you can be a very conditioned athlete and it's not a good idea. The people that I allow on and let them do the rep schemes like a workout is the people that are getting on weekly. So like even myself, I don't get on the GHD weekly. Like it's dumb for me to go do 120 in a Metcon. I'm gonna be destroyed. So make sure like that's happening and those conversations are happening. So we can use lower level sit-ups for gauges of those like more advanced sit-ups as well. Then if you have, like Jose said, if you got somebody that has back pain on a regular sit-up, definitely don't put them on a GHD. A GHD plank could be a great idea. Have you guys ever done those? Yeah, they're real hard. I love programming them in my core program for Barber Mafia. GHD planks are devastating. You can also put somebody face down on the GHD and do like a plank hold like a Superman, also really good. Using the GHDs for things that someone may be having some back issues on deadlifts or something like that, have them do GHD hip extensions. It's an unloaded way to train the same thing, but in a lot more of a comfortable position for them. We got a guy at the gym right now. His back is destroyed from the army. He's an extremely fit athlete, and that's what I've been having him do. GHD hip extensions. He's been doing sets of 10 and getting destroyed on them. And this is somebody with like a 470 deadlift. So sometimes like his erectors are just not what they should be, and he struggles. So sometimes they're going to be even harder for people than they think. I got one more thing on the sit up before we move on. Tuck and the V up. Right. Those I think are butchered a lot of times. I think they're great movements, but the problem is like people lay down and they go flat from laying, and then they go like knees into the chest, or they go V up and then they go flat on the ground again. Right. And like if it's a CrossFit competition and you're in quarterfinals or something like that, do it that way. Hit the standard and relax, save energy. But I try to always push, like if we have them in class, which I know like Mayhem loves programming V-ups, trying to do them as gymnastically perfect as possible. That's going to make people a better athlete. So the hollow position, I teach the hollow to the V or the tuck, back to the hollow. If that means we're not going to be doing 30 around and we're going to do 15 really good ones around, I push for that too, because we know that translation is going to make toes to bar better, pull-ups better, all of those things that athletes really get excited for. Their core strength is going to be that much more conditioned and stronger for. So I fight people on that. I really try to make them do that. Do it and do it correctly. And you'll see people that are like, I love the hips, I'm so good. And you put them in a hollow and you make them do it right, and all of a sudden they're doing like 5. So fight that. Hollow holds. Do you guys ever do progressions for them? Yeah, hollow hold is one that like people don't get. So like having a little progression for that's a really good way to have people in a good position. It's also a really good analysis for you to know their strength. Like if you have somebody in a hollow hold tuck, and as soon as those legs start to straighten, they start shaking and they get an arch into their back, then you know like they're not going to be able to do a tuck up or a V-up well. So having them do a tucked hollow hold for seconds is probably a better thing for them to do than to advance to a tuck up or a V-up. So you use that as an analysis too. That's an eye-opening on how hard or good hollow is for most people. Not excluding myself. Anything else you guys want to add into the sit-up or thoughts?
There's one variation of sit-up that I find very interesting to do. It's like when you hold a plate or even a dumbbell right in front, and you keep that way and you just go up.
Turkish sit-up.
It's called Turkish. Yeah, that
Yeah.
one is. If
People
you
get
have
super
someone that
confused.
it's someone that it's like, oh, it's only sit-ups.
No, those are
and
great.
that one.
Yeah, Turkish sit-ups. Turkish sit-ups are one of my favorite versions of sit-up. Especially like when I'm programming for an Olympic weightlifting athlete or like a power lifter, something like that, because they're not thinking about it, but it's shoulder stability
Shoulder.
building the entire time. You can also do Turkish sit-ups on the GHD. You would do parallel to a sit-up, back to parallel. So you wouldn't go upside down, but that's really tough. And I love it because like when you go back to the parallel, it's like you really have to stabilize in here on that plank because obviously the weight's pushing you down. Yeah, I love Turkish sit-ups, are really, really good one. Athletes do get confused with the Turkish get up. They see Turkish and their head goes to a get up immediately. And I made a mistake one time programming that for an athlete without a demo video, and they ended up doing like 60 Turkish get-ups.
Oh,
Got
shit.
fitter, but yeah, they were a little upset at me, and I was like, "That's not what I meant." So make sure you're clear on that one. Yeah, Turkish sit-ups are freaking awesome.
I saw,
love them.
I wanted to say that I saw, a variation for V-ups. I mean, a progression for V-ups that, someone sent it to me like a few days ago, and probably I will test it today. It's like just putting your legs straight up to the wall and try to touch your ankles, heels, or toes to
Like a
do
toe
the
touch crunch.
compression. Yeah, to do the compression. I'm gonna test it today in the warm-up to see if
I
how.
use I program those a lot too. The wall I think is a little better because it I call them toe touch crunches. It's hard to do it off the wall. You have to like stabilize a little bit more for it. But those are also really good for developing like the top two abs. Because like for me on a toes to the bar, I don't fail lats, I don't fail hip flexors. I fail top two abs. That's where
Mhm,
I blow up and struggle. So someone that's like hitting a wall like that, that's where they can improve.
mhm.
I'm actually doing a toes to bar program right now, like a toes to bar makeover program I'm writing, and we have those every week. They're a nice little addition. I would say a good scale sub for toes to the bar as well. Cause like we don't always want to just do like a leg raise on the
Like
rig.
feet against the wall.
Yeah, your feet are
Yeah.
up. Um,
Yeah, people will try to touch their knees, if not, if that's easy, the ankles, the toe, even the wall itself,
it's
if you can really
it's
compress.
it's actually like with the compression you're talking about, it's a good mobility too.
Hmm.
Like you want to get to the point where you can touch your toes, no problem. Like I struggle to touch my toes, and I don't think it's a strength thing. I think it's more of a mobility thing for me. So you can give people like progressing targets for that as well. Let's go jump rope. Jump rope's next. For sure, one that sometimes doesn't get coached. Sometimes people will just grab your ropes and go. I think if you have a plan for jump roping, it's actually a really easy one to teach and progress. So like we got dubs. It doesn't matter if you have dubs or not, but like we have dubs today. Grab your rope, do 30 single unders. What's something they can think about when they do the single unders that's going to help their double under?
I always tell them
Um,
to keep relax the shoulders, because they get like, or the elbows closed. That's the first two cues that I start with.
Both good cues, right? Like definitely no right or wrong to start with. I like both of those a lot. Something that people don't get right all the time is they think it's only this. It's not. Your elbows should be flexing. It should be a flick like this when you're doing, right? The elbow's the engine, the wrist is the steering wheel. So a lot of times you get athletes that remain straight and it's like they're in a good position, but they're like, I can't get any revolutions on the rope and it's not going fast. Isa, I'm sure she still does it. When Rachel Lashbrook does jump ropes next time, watch her. She's one of those people. Yeah, she doesn't do an elbow. So you should have a little bit of an elbow flick, like if you were getting water off your hands. So that's like relax the shoulders, flick the elbows and the hands would be a great one. Up Jose's alley. D, you were gonna say one. I think it was different. Were you gonna say hands? The placement?
no, yeah, well, that next to your pockets, kind of.
Yeah, pockets is a good one. Just having them getting into the position or something that's going to benefit. So it's not just they're not just mindlessly doing single unders; they're doing single unders with intent. Even on your people that have awesome dubs, we can make them more efficient by getting them into good positions.
I saw, I think I told you, Nate, I saw JT do like a progression, and it was just the rope and with the hand, like with the flick of the hand. So it was like tap tap. And I think that's, I've never done it, but I want to do it. So I think it's good for them to hear the tap tap and how fast it should be and the motion of the wrist and arm.
That yeah, I was just about to say that and like if you were gonna whip the floor like boom boom hard, I'm not gonna go. I'm barely going to hit the floor, right? And there's going to be no revolution. So it's actually a good drill, not just to hear, but to also understand that it's flick
Feel.
flick with the elbow and the wrist. So that
Yeah.
could be a good thing too. Because I've had plenty of people that when it's time to go, they're like, ugh, and they just don't get what do I do with my hands you know, and the jump is there or vice versa. Sometimes it's the opposite as well. So yeah, I like that drill. It's also a good like break from jumping, right? So if you're going through just only a jump rope progression and skill session, like that can be a little tediously boring. So it's like gives them a second to not just be jumping rope to work on something that it may have a light bulb moment.
So how would you do that? Would you first have them do singles and then do that flick and then have them try the double unders?
I would have one more stage in there. I would have singles with the intent. I would have singles again, but the
It's a
singles again
high
are going
jump,
to be a higher
higher
jump,
jump,
and I like to tell them like,
power
hey,
singles.
yeah, your revolution is going to be slower on the rope, right? Because sometimes I think when people like start to feel it, they're like, this is too slow, and
Mhm.
it's fine for it to go slower.
It's
It has to go
awkward, but
slower.
it's
It's
yeah.
awkward. So I like to throw that in there so they get that. I would do the first singles, the power singles, and then I would do that drill. Because then I go, okay, we're gonna go back to the power singles. You're gonna establish a pattern of like 5 to 8. And then when you're ready, that drill we just did with the flick, 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 we're going flick, 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 flick. So they understand what's happening here. I like to say shake the maracas. You're gonna go and that seems to work pretty well as well. And usually people think it's kind of funny and cute or whatever, and they and then but it works. It translates pretty well. So that's how I would do that. And then the people that have dubs, you're just trying to make them more efficient. So you know you're going to have the people doing dubs and their arms are like a T and they're doing this, and obviously that's going to burn their shoulders out. Then you have the people that can do dubs that are going to double Dutch jump and kick their butt or do a high knee. You know, so all of these layers are also a efficiency progression, not only a double under progression for the person that doesn't have them. It kind of fits both worlds. And I kind of, when I like to go through, I like to give both of the nuggets. So you get, if you're awesome at dubs, why this is still good for you. And if you're not, why this is going to progress you. I think probably everybody on this call does pretty good with like teaching some sort of rope. But I've been to plenty of gyms. I've seen plenty of coaches that don't even pay mind to it, like at all. And they just go. Um, I have running down on here too.
Can I ask a
Go ahead.
question?
Go ahead.
Sometimes like I don't I don't know if it's wrong or whatever, but like it kind of bothers me when like somebody's really good at doves, but they're doing it so freaking fast. Like Angelo does that. Like the jumps are so short and the rope is just so fast
This
and
is
kind
my
of flat-footed.
this is my thing with that. Is Angelo doing sets of 100 unbroken in his sleep, or is he doing a really fast set and then fucking up?
Yeah, he's fucking up.
Then yeah, we've got to slow him down. Like I was gonna say, if he's barely jumping on the floor, but his timing is so good
Yeah.
that they're no thank for him. Like awesome, dude, you're really good at dubs. Like you're gonna crush us
I
in this
mean,
workout.
he does do a bunch. I don't know. I just feel
What
like
I
it
would
doesn't
what I would
last.
that's what I would try to notice. Like
So, but
this,
does he trip or does he purposely stop?
it doesn't matter in my opinion.
And it happened once that they put a song, like I don't know which one it was, but it's like, let's say that it was like Staying Alive, and just like you have to do one jump every time, ta 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 ta, Staying Alive, and
The
then
cadence.
singles, and you
That's
were
fun.
warm up with that, and then that was my coaching back in my country, and then okay, double unders on that, and you hold on that pace, ta ta ta
That's good,
ta,
yeah.
Staying
That's a
Alive,
good little drill.
Staying Alive. Huh?
Yeah, because
That's that's
where my head goes that if he's just like untouchable on double unders and he's one of these people that a number doesn't matter, like you're gonna try to make him do times because he's that good, I wouldn't change anything because that means like he's not burning himself out, his positions are good and all these things. But if he's maybe round one is awesome, but then round two, three, four start to get a little weird, a couple things is happening. He's going so fast that he's losing position, he's tripping, or he's so tense
Yeah.
that even though he's not losing position, he's like this doing dubs and his shoulders are burning out. Now we also know he's not being efficient. So
Yeah,
like
that's the situation. He looks very tense.
yeah, what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, so trying to get him to probably slow down and like have that cue with Jose, like, hey, relax and think more here. He's gonna actually be faster on double unders if
Yeah.
he can get into that zone than to do 40 really fast and have to break versus unbroken, relaxed. And then we're CrossFitters. Like, so we're not one movement specialist. I would be fucking amazing if we were one movement specialist, but that's not our thing. We have to go do something else right after we do something that we're really good at. And if he's so tense on that, and then he has to go do something else, and it's gonna negatively affect him because he's already fatigued up, it doesn't do him any good to be that fast on dubs anyway. You know, it's like the person that sprints the rower for the first round and is winning for all of one round because they went too hot on the rower. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't help. So I would try to get him to go a little slower and relax. And I've literally told people, go slower. Like, don't think you have to go so fast. It's not. We're not trying to do triples. Slow this down a little bit so your jump can relax. And if everything relaxes, it's not just going to be his shoulders. He's also going to be more under control cardiovascularly too. So there's more of a ripple effect rather than just stamina fatigue in the arms or the legs. Like, could be either one. Yeah, that's like, if you see somebody like that, that's what I would break down on them. And then, you know, if you have somebody too, like Hunter's really good at double unders, right? He can do sets of 150 unbroken on command all the time. Hunter loves winning workouts too. So like, he's so good at double unders, like he's somebody that you can go, let's look at the rope, your length of your rope. Because if his rope is hitting 2 feet in front of his feet and dragging through, and he's doing sets of 150, that's now adding time to his set as well. So unless someone's rope is cut at their belly button and they're perfect, like we've got work to do. And I'm not saying if his rope's cut here to go from here to the belly button, but let's take an inch off, you know, and that's gonna create less drag, less fatigue, and it's gonna create a faster revolution. Have you guys ever seen where like a professionally cut rope hits in front of the feet? It's literally like 4 inches in front of the toes. Like, the amount of drag on the floor is like this much. And other than that, the rope is in the air. Watch when we have ropes next time and you're in the gym, just pay attention to people where the ropes hit. You're going to see people ropes hitting like 2 feet in front of their feet, and it drags all the way through, and it's 2 feet behind them as well. And you got to think like that's pumping the brakes for every revolution of that rope. If we're doing dubs, we're pumping the brakes 2 times a rep. And then, oh, my shoulders are on fire, coach. It's not always because they're tense. It's actually because they need to work harder because they're putting brakes on every time it goes through. Don't just go cutting people's ropes because you'll fuck them up. Like, that's got to be a progression over time. As their skill and position gets better, you go to that. And you'll notice if people, I like a wide rope because I like my hands out here. You'll see that all the time. And just trying to get them in is going to make a difference. Anything else on the rope? I'm not going to spend a ton of time on running. I got running written down too. That's definitely one we don't coach very often. And I also think there's I think there's a time and a place to take some time to coach running. And then there's a time and a place where like you're not, just depending on what like your workout is today. Like, you know, if they came to class and it's a 5K, like it'd be a good day to talk about some running technique a little bit. But if you came to class and it's 2 very complex movements and the third one is running, like you're probably not going to have as much time. But just what I like to do personally in them is just small tidbits and drills. Like if I'm doing a line drill where I'm having people do butt kickers and high knees and things like that, I talk about like, hey, when you're doing these high knees, I want you to land ball to the foot, and just have them starting to get used to thinking about that. Or when you do your butt kicks, I want you to land ball of your foot. Just stuff like that can start to be you teaching about running without like belaboring them, if that makes sense. A simple running and place drill to feel, hey, ball of the foot, relax the foot when it catches. You don't got to spend a bunch of time and then just move on. And what we're doing there is like, if I'm just doing something small to think of every time, if you've now been in my class for a year and every time we've run, I've given you something to think about, I'll move that needle. Versus we also can't I can't be like, hey, this is running technique. Go run your 5K with this. You're going to hurt somebody. Like they only say like when you're learning something, run like 100 feet and then revert back to what you're doing. And then next time run 200 feet, revert back to what you're doing. So just like we would build volume, we would also build like running technique as well. You have to get your calves conditioned for doing it properly. So it would just be like drip effect anyway. That's why I say I'm not gonna spend a bunch of time on it now. And probably not in class. It's just gonna be a little tidbit.
So for somebody like, for example, like me, I used to heel strike a lot. Um, and you want to like to have a distance run or whatever. Like I've told some of my athletes to not really think about how fast they're going, just focus on how they're striking with their foot until they kind of get used to it and it feels more natural, and then they can go the distance.
Yeah, I tell people that too. Like if we have 400s in the WOD and it's something that they are a little more intrigued on fixing, I'm like, hey, take your first 100 meters. So like to wherever the 200 mark is that you're gonna pass. When you hit the 200, I want you to think about it. And then when you hit that, just run it. Don't think about it. You know what I mean? So they have like this little stint they can think about it sometimes too, instead of
Oh,
trying
so
to do it the whole time. Because
got it. Okay.
what I find that happens to me personally, and I think other people, is they think about it too much about ball of foot striking, and they get really tense, and their foot doesn't relax, and they blow their feet and calves up. Because technically, it's the ball of foot strike, and the foot should relax after that. So the heels do contact the ground, but some people think, oh, my heels can't touch the ground, and they run like they're wearing high heels without a heel, right? And that's going to be exhausting. So building up what they're doing slowly can be really important too. Heel strikers, just I tell them try to land flat. Try to land flat under you instead of going from 0 to 100. Like a flat foot landing can be really good for some people. And it kind of goes back and forth, you know, on good running technique. There's coaches that teach flat foot, and they do it on purpose because they don't want people to stay tense in the ball. So like you can have some wiggle room there. Is what I'm kind of like getting at. And we're CrossFitters, right? Like we want to be good at running, but we're not going to try to win the marathon record and go a sub 2 hour. You know, that's not what we're doing. So we got to get it to a point that it's good. But like I think over stressing it can be just like any movement. We got a lot of shit to work on. All right, let's talk anything on running before we go to the push up. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on the push up in that article I sent, but I just want to highlight some things that I really liked in the article and then just some easy faults. Push up. I think it is personally, one of the most underused movements in our space, right? We get real excited for the push up when like February, March rolls around, right? And why is that? Because Murph's coming. So it's like all of a sudden we focus on the push up and then we finish Murph and then the rest of the year we kind of forget about the push up. And then next year we're bad again. And we've done what we said we weren't going to do again for the 19th year in a row. So one, I think push ups are very, very underused. Because when we look at it, it's step one in the developmental phase of some of the movements we really want to be good at, right? If I can't do a strong push up and have stamina, I can't really expect to be amazing at like handstand push-ups, right? And I think where people lose it is like they start to kick all their handstand push-ups, and then you kick up on the wall, and their strict is like not there, right? We should be focused on as athletes and as coaches developing very strong, good sets of push-ups and bleeding that into very strong, good sets of strict handstand push-ups, right? If we can do both of those things, when we do get a workout that we can kick like Diane, I'm going unbroken with no problem. So as far as the push-up goes, like put more value in that. I'm gonna call it standards. Standards on the push-up though, doing them well, right? Being rigid all the way through the body. Glassman had a little line in here that said the chest, shoulders, bellies, hips, and thighs are in a race to be last to the floor. I liked that statement because you can kind of envision what that push-up looks like trying to be last to the floor. Takes away the pike, like reaching the chest, takes away that worm, like belly to the ground push-up. Dee was just telling me a story about her gym people, like a guy with a big belly was like, no, I can't because my belly's in the way. 100% bullshit. I have a little belly. My chest went to the floor just fine. That's just a rigid body like being missing. Some coaches coach the push up as the chest is going to get to the floor, but the hips and the thighs are not. And I don't love that terminology because I think it leads more toward the pike where they kind of keep the butt up and the chest falls, what we don't want. So coaching it that everything's kind of getting to the floor at the same time is a good way to do it. If you like get to the bottom and the chest is hovering, there is this like sliver of a gap that you'll see with the hips and the thighs. Like it's right there, but it's just not quite resting on the floor. The control of kissing the floor and back up, I think is a really important thing because that's going to build strength rather than those people that free fall and nosedive and they lose tension and they actually lay. We're going to try not to lay. I think that's a really important thing to develop it. And then there's one more thing he talked about on the push-up that I thought was really valuable, and it was the cadence. So like I was thinking about it, and he's talking about you should be building to 50 true push-ups. And I'm like, I think I could do that right now. But then one of the things he has listed in his cheats was speed. And I'm like, ooh, nailed me, right? Because I free fall and I'm just strong enough to free fall, stop, and then back up. I'm taking out probably the hardest part of the push-up by not controlling my body weight. So the cadence he gave was 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. On 1, 2 on the down, 1, 2 on the up. So you can kind of envision that we're thinking about these push-ups, that rigid body, right? That they're all trying to get to the floor last, and you can kind of see the absolute control of that athlete while they're moving. I think if you take those two things away on the push-up and develop that into large sets, good things will happen on the handstand push-up.
I think that also helps develop the full range of motion because you got the guys that want to do it so quick that they're shortening their range. Giving them that cue, I think, will help them a lot.
Well, it's funny, like that's a good point because I think if I'm doing push-ups like this and I'm trying to do 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, that's gonna now become harder than that brief moment I get to lock out at the top, right? Like that lockout at the top is my only brief moment of a rest versus this, it would just be tension the entire time. It would get really nasty. Just like we talked about a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the handstand push-up, and I'm like, I call the reps. Call reps. Guys, we're going to do 10 push-ups. I'm going to call the first 3. Don't want you to lay flat on the ground. Down, up, down, up. Like you can see the speed of that push-up. No one can go fast. And then be like, hold that same pace. So that'd be a good way to do it too. Something he had in this article that I actually really liked, and I think I would personally like to do more of and potentially layer it into some people in class. He did not talk about going from a push-up to a pike push-up to a box push-up to a handstand push-up. That wasn't his progression. Last week's progression from a push-up to a handstand push-up was we're just going to hire the feet. And over time, we're going to continue to hire the feet with it. And I just kind of started thinking about that because I'm like, yeah, if you think of the first couple, like it's not upside down. But then you start to think of this one. And what does that look like if I'm upside down in a hand doing it like a push-up, getting to a handstand push-up?
Right.
My whole body's elevated.
Hollow?
If I take hollows in it, if I take that person off and take the box away and put their head on the ground, that now looks like a tripod and it looks like a freestanding handstand push-up. So part of what I like kind of got excited and like why I say I think I learned something from this article is if you build somebody to elevating the feet on a push-up into that, like, I don't know if this is a 45-degree angle, but that angle where the feet are above the horizon and they're almost vertical, but they're not totally upside down on a handstand push-up, the head is going to have to go in front of the fingertips. This is not going to be a really comfortable position. So I actually think probably the strength and development from that position is going to be more valuable than off of a box in a pike or a pike push-up. I still think there's times and places for those, so don't take this and be like, we're never doing those again. We're going to do it this way. But I think it adds another tool into the toolbox that can make us more valuable when it comes to handstand push-ups. Because if I can get very strong with my feet on a 45-degree box here doing push-ups, now when I'm on a wall facing handstand push-up and my feet are going from here to here, it's only a small degree of difference. And if what do we say is a harder version of a handstand push-up? A wall facing handstand push-up. So do you see how that actually blends, I think, into probably a stronger handstand push-up than always working a box?
It's actually the opposite of progressing to a push-up. Because if you put them on a box with their hands on a box, going like
Yeah.
right. So it's the opposite. Instead of hands, it's gonna be feet.
It's just like you're trying to do a full circle, right? If somebody's trying to
Yeah.
develop a push-up, we elevate their hands and our goal is to do this. Eventually we're
Mhm.
here and then our goal is to do this
Right.
and then eventually we're handstand
Yeah.
pushing upping. So it's kind
Yeah.
of cool to see like a push-up, like when I said like it's the most underrated used movement. All of our presses are a push-up. Even a dip. A dip is just you've taken the person now from a flat floor and you've turned them upright and they're doing the same thing. So every single one of these goes hand in hand with all of them. And I think it's just a funny thing to be like, oh, I need to get my dips better. And you see people cranking dips or you see people cranking handstand push-ups only, and you don't see push-ups, right? It's a really good example of the saying Glassman has, when you think you've mastered everything, go back to the basics and pay closer attention. This is a really good point of going back to the basic and paying closer attention. When we talk about that push-up and turning it into that push-up, and then here's a wall facing, and then here's no wall. Like you would start to develop a little bit of balance too by wall facing handstand push-ups because it forces you into the tripod. And I think we said it, I think I said it to Issa last week to try the hip wall facing. I think it was Issa, it might not have been you. It was you. And when you go down, pull your feet off the wall. And then when you go up, let them go back on the wall. And you see how this it starts to inch you into these really, really cool advanced movements that we look at it. I don't say we, because we're dreamers on this call, right? But we look at for members and we go, we're never gonna get there. You actually suddenly see this path that's like, oh, that's actually really attainable to get there. It's just going to take some time. Very simple article, but it's such a good reason to go back and like rethink and relook at basics. Cause like all of us just got another handstand push-up tool to put into our arsenal. So we're not just doing seated dumbbell press, pike push-ups, box push-ups. We've got even more. And now we've got a deficit version of all those as well. The one thing I will say, in this version, well, it's not really in this version. I'm gonna draw a really bad picture real quick. So we've got that tripod. Right, we've got the tripod on the ground. Oh, where's it not blurry? There we go. We've got tripod on the ground. That also doesn't change from a push-up to a handstand push-up. Can you guys see that and envision that in my head? Like when I go down for the push-up, my head is well in front of the fingertips. Yeah, and just as the degree changes, nothing should change there as well. So keep like that in mind too. Usually when I do progress handstand push-up workouts and I talk about that, I'm like, hey guys, go down. I want you to notice where your head is in relation to your hands. Right? It's really way in front of them. And then when we do the pike, be like, that doesn't change. And that can help it click for people too. I think it's really cool.
I have a question though. So those people that don't really have a push-up, don't really have a pike push-up, and you're giving them dumbbell like shoulder press, you don't want to give them that all the time. You do want to get them through the full range of motion though. But what other thing can you do other than the shoulder press if they can't really do a pike or a push-up? Do you just get them raise their hands and just start them
Yeah,
there?
I was gonna say you already answered that, right? If we're saying we can start a push-up at any degree, right? Yeah, a bar across the rig or onto a box, like something like that. And then your goal is to do it. Cause like keeping it more simple, like, yes, we want to go overhead press to develop a handstand push-up. But if you say like this person doesn't have the strength to just simply press anything, we need to develop the strength to even get to this being a thing. Cause like
Okay.
dumbbell press, I use all the time and for a handstand push-up WOD. I make it my goal to make sure like if we've got sets of 10 handstand push-up, I want them 8, 9, 10 is an absolute struggle bus. I want it to be hard. I want them to struggle. I want them to have to break. I don't want them doing 10 like this. That's not going to do anything for them as far as our goal is for that day. So one, you have to make sure the load is appropriate and that you are going to make them struggle. But also if even if they're struggling and they're pressing 15-pound dumbbells over their head and they weigh 150, that's a long fucking road to duplicating that. So I think getting your body weight moving too and getting gymnastics going is important. And if you think about like it's a gymnastics movement, if we're going to preserving the modal domain is a way of preservation as well. So yeah, lift them up however high they need to go. I personally like barbell across the rig the most, just because you have more degrees that you can change versus sometimes like I've got a new girl right now, a 30-inch box push-up she cannot do. Like she is either gonna face plant or the bottom, like it's not gonna go well. So like I have to put her on a barbell type thing. If you got no wall space, no rig space, people are on the rig, then going to that seated, that's what you're gonna have to do because of logistics. So that is gonna come into play a little bit. Any other thoughts? Have you guys ever done the half range of motion one on the dumbbells, by the way? So seated, yeah, like forehead up back to forehead because you're mimicking that weak point. If you're handstand push-upping, it's really a headstand. So it's kind of like you're forcing some strength and weakness in that like mid-range, which is a weak point for a lot of people. So that's a good little variation too. I like that more for accessory work, not for a Metcon, but something, just another tool in your toolbox for it.
Yeah, I work them
Same.
up with 1.5. I told them
Yeah, 1.5 would be great.
I warm them up for
Love
handstand
that.
push-up.
Love that because now you're getting full range and that like half. That's a great. You just made the exercises worse for all my clients. Now they're gonna get 1.5 shoulder press. Thanks, Jose. All right. Any other thoughts on any of that stuff for the push up or just in general, kind of going back to basics?
Yes, one thing. I think that I already have the answer. Elbows inside, close to the rib cage, right? We have a lot of people that flare it and they say that they feel more comfortable with that. And I found these fitness gurus that they say, hey, you need to practice in all the options so you don't only have one thing. But I think that the answer would be we want the safest one for achieving intensity.
You got to
Am I
think
right?
too for fitness guru, you are. I think your head's in the right space. Like our goal is to make very healthy humans fitter and continue to be fitter. And if they're getting fitter, they're going to be healthier into longevity of life. Right? That's our goal at the end of the day. Right? The sickness, wellness, fitness continuum. So I don't want to put somebody upside down or in a compromising shoulder position because this is not good. We all know that. And if they start to have shoulder issues and they start to not come to the gym or be limited in the gym, now my long-term goal is being hindered because of some stupid shit like that. You have to also think fitness gurus and influencers on Instagram, they want results as fast as possible, as quickly as possible. And their end game is not that you don't go to the nursing home when you're 75 years old. They don't give a fuck about that. They want you to get the six-pack ripped and fitness in a month if possible, even if it's the most unhealthy thing to do, because they want you to get excited about results and now tell your friends so they sell more products. So that's like the weird world, like we started this call off talking about, social media and some of the flaws. Like it's a weird thing for me to have a conversation, which I've had to have and go, if we do this the right way, our results are going to be 6 months from now, not next week. Like this dude's telling me, if you want to go there, go there. But mark my words, it's probably not a good choice for you. So it's like we're doing the more responsible thing, even though, yes, it is harder. We know we're going to keep this shoulder girdle safer longer.
Yeah. They will also go with disruptive things that will get attention and make like, yeah, I know that I was doing it wrong or stuff like that, bro.
Yeah, and I mean, look at not just safety, look at what we just talked about on going from basic as fuck to our most advanced movement. If your goals try to eventually go to that most advanced movement, and like let's say it's not even that, but it's just a wall facing handstand push up, I can't be here anymore. I'm gonna fall over on my back. I've got to be balanced. So like even on get more advanced, those proper movement mechanics are for a reason. They're not just for being safe. We have all those neurological skills like balance and being a big one that have to come into play and work for our form and function of our body. That's another thing. And don't get me wrong, I agree with the influencers to an extent. I do think you should change things up. So I don't think you should always supinate pull up. I think, or pronate. I think you should supinate. I think you should go wider. I think you should go neutral. All of those things are good things, but we also have to have consideration of like, where are we going as well? That makes sense to you guys?
Yeah, but my idea is like, fine if you are doing like 3 reps of like a bad deadlift because you need to train also picking up loads,
Odd objects.
objects. Yeah, fine if you're doing like 3 or 5, but not an intensity when you're doing 20 of those and going
Yeah.
fast.
Not at intensity, not at crazy loads. Like, because remember, intensity is not just speed, it's load as well. So like all of those things. And don't get me wrong, maybe they're a strongman. Maybe they want to compete in sport. They're going to have to be intense. Like that's a part of that sport. But then you go, if you're signing up for a competition, you are also acknowledging that this is probably not the best thing for my body, which is something I think people need to realize. Like, it doesn't matter if you're doing a local comp or you're going to do the CrossFit Games or, World Strongman. It's probably not the best thing in the world for your body, right? And there is that acknowledgement, I think, in the back of our minds sometimes, or there needs to be at least. Like people who do competitor programming. Like I think asking really like, why are you doing this? If it just makes you very happy and you feel good, keep doing it. Like I have no issue with it, but like we have some guys at the gym that do it, and I watch them every day. Shoulder pain, their hips fucked up, all these things, and then like I've asked them like, do you guys do local comps and compete? No, and I'm kind of like, why don't you guys just hammer a workout and then sit in the sauna together to talk? Like it'd be better for you rather than doing terrible snatches. So people's whys come into play, I think, a lot too. All right. Getting me on a tangent here. Anything else you guys want to add before we call today a day? Sick. I'm gonna try to take some videos and add to our video collection. But keep sending your videos in, and I will see you guys on Thursday. We're gonna keep going down at least an article a week in that Glassman list. But if you guys still have other ideas of stuff you want to see, let me know because I'll implement them. Like I think I'm gonna let Elise do like a safety brief because I think that would be good just to retouch because you never know. But like whatever ideas you guys have, please let me know. Other than that, I'll see you guys Thursday.
Bye.
See y'all.